By the time I was admitted to hospital, I'd gone down to 7.5 stone, which, I'm 5'10", so I was just really incredibly thin.
As I was ill, there'd been a bruise on my chest, and I thought, how the hell did this bruise come up? I don't remember bumping it. And then this kind of fluidness kind of subsided, and the bruise didn't.
And in fact, I retired on the basis that I had less than 6 months to live.
For me, treatment from memory was 7 pills a day. No, 11 pills a day. It was 7 in the morning and something at night. You can't go to school before you take your meds, so you have to take your meds. And then when you come home from school, you have dinner and you take your meds, you go to bed.
Welcome to this special compilation episode featuring highlights from Series 1 and 2 of HIV the morning after. It's here to keep the feed interesting before Series 3 drops in June. This is the second of 5 such episodes playing out across May. (1995). And here in the UK, Friends has completed its first series on Channel 4. The Bridget Jones column premieres in The Independent. An Arsenal football team pay a then record-breaking £7.5 million for striker Dennis Bergkamp, a footballer that even I've heard of. Meanwhile, come November of that year, Anthony Bird, a graphic designer living in Brixton, is on his way home from work.
I was working in Soho at the time, and just walking from Soho to Oxford Circus Tube, I'd started coughing and just had to stop and sit down on the pavement because the coughing was so bad. And
which has to be said is like a 7-minute walk, a 7-minute easy stroll.
Yeah. And that was my last day at work. And then 3 days later, I'm lying in bed. I think we talked about going to ER, and I literally didn't have the strength to put my boots on and walk downstairs. And we had our next door neighbour was a GP who was also gay, and my partner just said, "Right, I'm getting Julian from next door in," and Julian just looked at my chest, sounded it, looked at me, and then called an ambulance immediately. The Princess Diana Panorama interview was literally on the TV as I was being looked over by the ambulance staff.
So that was 20th of November 1995.
Yeah. And by the time I was admitted to hospital, I'd gone down to 7.5 stone, which, I'm 5'10", so I was just really incredibly thin. I'm kind of grateful to be in hospital because I'd been fighting for a few days to say, look, something is seriously wrong. Can someone do something about this? And the doctors basically said, we think you've got PCP. Are you aware of the implications of that? I'd read things like "And the Band Played On," so I knew exactly what pneumocystis, I'll probably pronounce it wrong, but pneumocystis cardiae pneumonia. I knew exactly what that was, that it was an AIDS-defining illness. And so they didn't actually mention HIV. They just said, we think you've got PCP. Are you aware of the implications of that? And I knew exactly what the implications were. If I'm honest, I just kind of felt relief that, right, now I know why I've been so ill for the last few months.
And also, frankly, you must have had relief that you didn't have to say the full name of PCP every single time.
So I'm in intensive care because I'm obviously seriously ill, wired up to everything. And they start pumping Septrin into me, which is, so it's something, I think it's something they used before antibiotics, but it's got a really wide range. It's pretty strong, and it's got a really wide range of what it acts on. And I started feeling better almost immediately. I remember after 2 days of it, it's like, I finally got an appetite. I want to eat food. I'm not forcing myself to eat food. I want to eat food. And that just felt incredible after several weeks of really having no appetite whatsoever.
And we talk about the next year, and we go to Pride in the summer of 96.
Yeah.
What did you witness there, and what did you think?
We went to the party in the park afterwards, which was
Clapham Common.
Clapham Common, yeah. And yeah, it's mostly a good day, but at that point in Pride, they just started doing a big balloon release, and so they'd have a big balloon release of, I'll say, 30,000 balloons, and each balloon represented someone who died of AIDS. There'd always be a group of dizzy queens who wouldn't realise what it was and would cheer. So that was always a bit unpleasant. And so I like the people I'd gone with the park with a couple of HIV activist friends and my partner. And we just decided, we knew when the balloon release was, and we just found ourselves a little, quiet area of the park. And let me get a grip of myself. And that was a moment for me where it's like a real intimation of death, because I can remember thinking, next year one of those balloons is going to be me.
Gary Brough is from a small Welsh mining village, a place that doesn't fit the young gay Welshman. So come the early 1990s, he heads to London, its opportunities and its bright lights calling loudly. But when he gets there, he stumbles on a city in mourning.
That was a tough time. The early 90s to the mid 90s was kind of the peak, really, of it. It had come to the UK later than the US, and so the illness and the deaths I didn't really see in the 80s. It was only in the 90s. It was commonplace to see people being ill, people disappearing, people that you didn't see very regularly, that you'd find out had died that you didn't know, or the people that you saw regularly who you would see deteriorate, and, be told, oh, so-and-so's in hospital, so-and-so this, so-and-so that, this is going on. And, young men there with walking sticks. It was horrifying. It was something that it didn't make sense. Clearly it wasn't fair, but there's lots of war analogies that come up with that, but I think that sense of feeling shell-shocked, it being commonplace and yet unbearable at the same time, was very strange. I'd had a kind of a patch of illness, some kind of flu-y thing, and as I was ill, there'd been a bruise on my chest, and I thought, how the hell did this bruise come up? I don't remember bumping it. And then this kind of fluiness kind of subsided, and the bruise didn't, and it started to get bigger. And so I thought, oh, I know what this is. So I made an appointment to go in and see my doctor, and opened my shirt, and I'm like, can you tell me what that is? And he says, what do you think it is? I said, I think it's Kaposi sarcoma. And he said, yes, it is.
It's the 1980s, and Peter Willis is a young gay doctor in London. His partner of 16 years has died from an AIDS-related condition. Peter has continued with his life, and whilst treating an increasing number of people living with HIV, he is not surprised to get his own positive diagnosis.
It began to dawn on me what was going on. I mean, after all, I was a fairly experienced doctor. And I was missed under Professor Semple, Steve Semple, a lovely man, professor of medicine at Middlesex. And he was one of the great reasons why the Middlesex became such a centre for HIV in those days. And one evening, Steve Semple came down and sat in a chair looking glum. And I thought, oh, poor Steve, how can I help him? And he said, I'm sorry, I have bad news for you. Once I had the diagnosis, I always assumed that I wouldn't have very long to live, 5 years at the most, and that was probably optimistic. My physician, he was a colleague and a friend, and we used to talk about HIV once it was established. After work, we talk about it, and it was he who eventually, looking after me, and my CD4 count had been very low for a long time. And I suppose, yes, I did actually get because of that, I did get the diagnosis of AIDS rather than just seropositive. It was he who said one day, I think you'd really quite like to retire, wouldn't you? And it was such a relief. I'd never thought I could retire. I mean, it didn't even take time off if you were ill as a GP. It was such an extra burden on your colleagues. But it was a huge relief. And in fact, I retired on the basis that I had less than 6 months to live. It was in your mind. You could, even people who didn't talk about it, you could see a lot of friends died. I used to say as a little sick joke that my social life was at Golders Green Crematorium. Yes, it did have a huge impact on life. And of course, in the cultural world, we lost a huge number of really creative people.
And with the passing of each of these people, did it ever reflect back on your own life? Did you ever look at these people and go, will they be coming to Golders Green Crematorium for me in 3 months?
No, isn't that odd? I don't understand that. I got on with life. I didn't buy wine that needed keeping for longer than a few years. Things like that, but I didn't seem to get distressed by it. Not that I was aware of. I wonder, is it all there suppressed deeply somewhere, and one day it's all... It's a bit late now, isn't it, for it all to suddenly give me a nervous breakdown.
You had had a professional relationship with HIV since it appeared, and you've been seeing patients, dealing with them. What did it feel like as a doctor, suddenly being able to turn around to people who are living with HIV and say, I can offer you effective treatment?
Oh, it's lovely, of course. It's wonderful. It really changes everything.
Coming into the present day now, Eli Fitzgerald is 26 and has never known life without HIV. He was born with the virus in his body. Eli is a trans man, a peer support integration manager, and an advocate nationally and internationally for trans people living with HIV.
I think when you are so young and to know you've got HIV, you almost have this childhood resilience, I guess, is something we've all got. And it's that this is my life. I don't really care. I don't really know what this means. And then you get a little bit older and you start to know that actually this diagnosis, this thing is so much bigger than that childhood innocence of, well, it's just a diagnosis. And you start to conceptualize the ideas that, you know, you'd hear on sort of in the school playground or whatever, where people would make jokes, oh, don't drink that cup's got AIDS. The moment it hits you is when you start hearing your friends make jokes about something they don't understand. For me, treatment from like memory was 7 pills a day. No, 11 pills a day. It was like 7 in the morning and something at night. You can't go to school before you take your meds, so you have to take your meds, and then when you come home from school, you have dinner and you take your meds, you go to bed. But I eventually went down to 3 pills a day, and I remember that was life-changing. It was like, just take these pills at night time. You can wake up when you want. I sort of oddly fell in love with those pills. Even now, I'm like, I kind of miss them. They were my like certainty, and I think with all the chaos that sort of began with the transitioning and all of that, the one consistent thing in my life was my medication. As people got older, you'd go to house parties, you'd go out, and in my pocket I'd have to like wrapped up in tin foil, which ended up just looking like I was hoarding drugs, to be honest, were my pills, and you'd have to sneak off to a toilet to take them, so no one knew. When everything feels like it's out of control, I guess the one thing I turned to was trying to take control over my HIV, and not necessarily in a good way, as in, you know, stopping my meds and not going to hospital appointments. There's so many reasons why someone might stop taking their meds, whether that's because they can't face HIV or because their life might be feeling as if it's derailing per se, or you just don't want to deal with HIV, and not just HIV, but you just don't want to deal with being that person that takes meds or being trapped, I guess. And it was explained to me when I was younger, is sometimes it sort of works in the same sense that eating disorders do. So that control, that element of almost self-harm. I remember being in Liverpool on the day you found out, well, it was in the news that people with HIV can expect to live a normal life expectancy. And I remember that was crazy. And thinking, okay, well, we're going to be fine. Just be nice to people. Like, genuinely, you don't know what people are going through. The best thing any of us can do for each other is to be mindful and to just accept them for who they are.
Full conversations with Anthony Bird, Gary Brough, Peter Willis and Eli Fitzgerald are available now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube and wherever you normally listen to podcasts. Thank you to Pauline Nidu at UnstoppableMonsters.com for his wonderful theme tune, and to Murray Lang for his continued support. Please rate and review the show, as it helps to spread the word, and Series 3 of HIV The Morning After begins in June.